Okay, so we're gonna start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so the first is for the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything that they would like to add to the agenda or changes? No?
I'm making the motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next up would be the meeting minutes. I gave everybody the meeting minutes from last time. If everything's good with that.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from last time as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. So we kind of started, next on the agenda is about the permits today. We had started at the beginning of this year, kind of a different format for the building and zoning. And so I brought in, just so that we can everybody keep updated on what's going on, so you're not necessarily on the daily, but, I only printed one though, sorry. But I did print, this is something that everybody kind of pass around if you want to look at that. That's just the permits that have been issued, and paid for, picked up. So it's kind of a summary of all those, it's the reports. So the structure of that now is, we have to submit that into the treasurers, they pay everything through the treasurer's office, and then it comes in from there. Auditor finalizes it, and then they give me a summary. So I just wanted to show that to you guys, kind of what we're bringing in as far as permit fees go. And I think the understanding is they're going to have our separate account. We're gonna be like a self-sufficient government entity here. And then they'll just continue to roll that over so that it's non-revolving, so we'll be able to hang on to those fees, in the event that we had something improvement we needed to do. But that's just kind of a summary of the last 3 months that you guys can take a look at, those for January. And then we just been reconciling those monthly, so then just going to the end of the month, turning those in, reconciling those so that those are checks and balances on what we brought in versus what they actually took in. I am finding that, they apply for a permit, we get it ready, get it submitted, let them know where it's to be picked up and stuff. Some of them lag a little bit more to get them picked up. So some of them have actually rolled, they might have been submitted in February, but they weren't picked up till March, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how that's worked, we just pick it up. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on some of that, as you're looking through that. I think after January and the first initial just getting it smoothed out, it's been going pretty smoothly. We've had quite a few phone calls and questions.
There's a pickup.
There is a pickup. Yeah, spring was a pretty good sized pickup. January just had a couple, and then springtime hit, and everybody, I do find that they're going to the website first. Most of them, a good portion. And then they might call us some questions if they have, which we've been filtering those also, but, I don't know, I think the website's been a really big asset for.
I go to the website.
I know, it's just a really, streamlined way to do it. I know, yeah, save the phone call.
Yeah.
And most of them have they've done follow-up questions if they had one through, corresponding through which we all have access to the Gmail account, or excuse me, the Ogden set us up an email account. To be able to filter those. I don't know, I think so far so good, it seems like.
I had somebody bring something to me that was not ours. It was the city's, so I called Mr. Vincent and kindly handed that over to him.
Yes, yeah. I have seen that. That's usually the first question. If they call, hey, do I need a building permit? And that first question is just, where's the property located? It is confusing a little bit to most, persons that live just a little bit, what feels like a county, but still within their 2-mile jurisdiction. We had one out on Freshie Fork Road, they called, and I was like, well, you're city. I'm like, no, it's county, and you just kind of show them the mapping. So those kind of things, but I do find that a lot of people, we've had anywhere from deck additions to major additions to new home builds. There's been quite a few. cell tower additions, quite a bit of that. I think the permit fees have kind of, everybody's gotten used to that structure since they're available online. I've not had any complaints, thank goodness. Because you guys would have to come for that, but.
Yeah, mine was, ours, the one from the city was a complaint, I'm like, oh yeah, this is not us.
Yeah, it's not us, and here's somebody that passed that one on. So you guys
How
know,
does the 2 mile radius,
how is it, or
how
where?
does that, the 2 mile radius for Tell City, do they go to Tell City or do they go to the county?
So if it's within 2 miles jurisdiction, on the zoning map, you can lay that map out over across the GIS and it'll show you. So then once they give you the address, you then look at the map to see where it's at. And I mean, to be honest, I live out on Seymour Road, and you would think that I'll be in the county. I come to city for all my permits.
Right.
So it's.
A lot of people don't know about that 2 mile radius.
Right. We've had some questions about that, some just not understanding, because you think city, as soon as you hit city limits, that's where it starts, and it's not really how that works. So,
Mhm.
even in Barkhamsted, we've had some people ask about that too, so. And they weren't understanding they were part of that city zoning, so, so just knowing that mapping, pulling it up, seeing where their property's at. That part of it's been pretty good. As far as that goes, that's pretty much just kind of going through it that way. I just want to make sure that, I think as we're doing these meetings, just that way everybody knows kind of what's going on, how many we filtered, that sort of thing. It is nice to see, like, there's been a couple of new home builds. That's really nice to see. That part's been working out pretty well. We have seen on the cell tower additions, so they're not broadening it, they're just taking off an antenna or something and then changing it out, some of that work, and so they have to get a permit for that. What I've been doing, because most of those are from out of state, they're not from here working, and most of the people that are having to pull the permit within their administration, they're not coming to Tell City to pick it up. So once they pay for it, so they have been mailing the check to the treasurer's office, and then we will email them a copy of that permit and keep the hard copy in the office and they read it. Goes alongside with the online option. Any questions or comments or anything about that stuff? I don't know. I think that's been going pretty well so far. We were able to, so that appropriation that we had requested for the little printer and things like that, that was approved. I submitted that to Chris Hamig for those purchases, got those in, small amount of office supplies and then that little printer. The printer's getting shipped back, so we'll get the printer soon, but it already just isn't working, so they're having to ship that back for us, so hopefully we'll get that back in. We will have our printer for that. Other than that, that's the only thing on that particular. Anybody else have any good thoughts or concerns on that?
Thank you for all you do.
Yes. Okay, and then, next on the agenda was, the subdivision there were some questions about making. There has been talk of a subdivision type concept out French Ridge Road in 37. And actually, Mr. Lynch had brought that to my attention because someone had, platted a survey and recorded it. And so he had kind of brought me up to date on some of that stuff, and I did bring that, the subdivision ordinances for that he had provided for us. So maybe if you wanna touch on kind of what they had.
Yeah, just let everybody know, back in 2006, I've been doing private work in Perry County. I came to Planning and Zoning Board. Previously, when people developed property, there's some surveying done in the county, and I guess there wasn't a plat. You couldn't find out how to retrace it, and so I was asked by a private developer to do some work. So I found out there was a low density subdivision that was made up in 97, an ordinance, and it states the definition of a subdivision is a planned division of tract of land into several smaller tracts pursuant to a plan or scheme for marketing the smaller tracts. And so for marketing, and a subdivision does not include unrelated sell-offs of smaller tracts from a larger tract, where there is no scheme or plan to create a subdivision. And so, as a private surveyor, I get asked a lot of times from family and stuff, cut off a piece for their children or another children's children, do this. And even sometimes, they do 40-acre tracts, bigger tracts and stuff like this. But whenever it comes down to a point where, you get smaller tracts and there's gray areas in this area. John Warner, he was a attorney whenever he was on the board here, and the numbers like three or more tracks. Where's that number? And several smaller tracks, and there's also a minimum of 2 acres. You can't do no less than 2 acres. Then there's actually if you go into the 301, it says for subdivisions, a lot is no greater than 5 lots per 10 acres, prorated to the actual number of acres of a subdivision, with no more than 20% of the lots located therein being less than 2 acres in size. So I've had developers try to squeeze that, okay, try to get another lot to sell, and then also, 150-foot wides are minimum of width of the lot. And so, and I've been asked, where's that at, front or the back? A lot of times you want to, a lot of times you can't have 150-foot road frontage, but maybe the back's 150 foot, because our ordinance of subdivision ordinance calls for 150-foot wide lot for 1 acre minimum. And so with all that, I guess, and I get asked all the time, and I've tried to stray away from low-density. I know Cashwagon has done some, and I'm kind of sure I'd probably deny doing it because of that, because it probably needed to look through the planning board. But so I saw this survey come through, and there was a 2 acre tract with several lots there, and so I kind of brought that to Manny's attention. That we probably need to look into that. When I reviewed it myself, well, I'm a low, I think a person should have their rights to do whatever they want to their property in that way, but, and have their freedom to do things. However, I think it's you just don't know who your neighbor's going to be. And especially like road frontage, how they're going to get road frontage. I've had clients before come to me and say, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'm going to go over my brother's land. We don't need a right of way." But you get a plan, something marketing scheme. You want to make sure that there'll be some kind of dedicated right of way out or something that's recorded correctly. And so with that survey that came through, by looking at it, it looked fine. It looked like everything would be handled correctly if all the deeds and everything got placed. But I think it probably just would have been nice. There's actually it'd been nice for them, or I think they might have came to us, but to come to us, and so they can name the subdivision on the plat, and possibly wouldn't have to write a meets and bounds description for each lot that they had, and I don't know if we need to enforce covenants and restrictions, but or at least make sure that there's going to be any dedication of a road or anything, because we need to possibly protect that for someone too. But that's kind of my thoughts on that. Where I kind of went out to Mandy and with that, and I think there's 1 2 acre lot and there was a 5 acre. I don't have that map in front of me, but I think there's 5 or 6 lots or 7, I don't know. But I kind of thought it kind of looked like a low density subdivision, and before, there was no there's no really checks and balances to for that to get into the courthouse without somebody really seeing it, or it's just kind of like a building permit, or they need to be someone to kind of review it before it gets recorded, and so that was one thing with Jane James, when she's a recorder, and I talked to Tracy about this, and I emailed Chris also, that whenever things get to a point where it looks like to be marketable and stuff, we probably need to say, or before it gets to the preliminary stage, so that we can kind of roughly review it, not be really hard, but we just need to.
Make sure the bare minimum is there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be a thing, and I think it says in here that in this, we really don't, we might not all have to approve it, it might be something just the president can say this is okay, and or whoever, if we get an administrator, how that works. Because Jim Goble used to do it, or when he used to sign off on it, and then there'd be a little place on the plat where this was approved by Jim Goble this certain date, and everybody knows that planning and zoning has seen it.
And that's what we did for that one out there, we just signed off on it. Yeah.
So I'm not trying to create waves or anything like this, but I think it's something, it's something that I know we need to, if we're getting planning and zoning active again, because there's just several years that we never met, or once a month. We need to bring that back up and just kind of get it refreshed.
When was that ordinance? 97?
97.
Well, that needs to be looked
I
at.
was gonna say, is this where the ordinance needs to be evaluated and maybe we make
Yeah,
a recommendation
would.
or an update to the ordinance?
Yeah, we've got several, we've even got some ordinances from back in the 80s.
There's quite a few, I think, even not just in county, I think the city has been brought attention to things that they would like changed to, everybody.
Because things
It's just
change.
Yeah,
You know,
put the back
yeah.
burner.
Yeah, it definitely, there's things to it. I mean, I think overall it's decent. I mean, 2 acres is the minimum for things, but,
So when they bring in a survey, I think your thought was to have something where someone has to look at things before the surveys are recorded. Is that what you're thinking? I didn't.
well, yeah, I mean, yeah, and then that's hard to judge. I mean, because sometimes I had a survey just come in last week, and there was like I wrote 4 or 5 different descriptions, and the reason I did that was not for marketing and selling tracts, it's just to fix boundary lines and gaps and overlaps of a survey. And the crazy, and there'd be like a 3/10 of an acre behind a parcel, and it don't have any road access or nothing. They can't build on it, but it's a parcel of ground that's there. So I have to write a description for it. It's just, and I record it. So so you gotta have discernment on things as well. And, but yeah, a planned division of tract of land, and, when they come in, or, probably need to get this maybe on our website, but we do have a low density subdivision control ordinance. So I think it's a good thing, it really is.
Yeah.
Name it, you got Tipsaw Acres, name it, and I guess they named that out there, a name, that's good, but, if they could put that on the plat too, and that way that,
Could be recorded.
yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, I talked to the landowner a little bit, the developer / landowner, and just kind of went over some of that with them. And I think everybody's on the same page. They didn't know. They said, well, I've been out to the courthouse a bunch. And my
Yeah.
surveyors talked to everybody here, like they were trying to do it what they thought was the right way. And obviously I had no idea.
Yeah,
Here we're on this board and I had no idea that this had to be something that you just happened to know from a long time ago that where you dealt with it.
Yeah,
You know, I think they were trying to do it the right way, but, and that's what he said, he goes, well, he said, well, I paid a surveyor to do all that work, to take care of all that, and he assumed, you know, so I guess something got missed, obviously.
Yeah, you know, they got road frontage, I mean, well, the county has, 25, what's that, French Ridge Road? Yeah, they got 25 feet from the center line both ways.
yeah, I'm not sure on
Yeah.
the pretty sure. But yeah, you know, right of ways, and I believe in our talking to Steve Howe and maybe before that, Ed Fikes, that if the county were to take over a road, I'm not saying that they would ever take one, but I believe the minimum width of a road is 60 foot for right of way. And that's if they would, and I know that's a special case. There's been things around the county that's, but you know, it's, whether these don't have to be county roads to go into, they could be private roads, but and I don't know how they do their own covenants and you know, how they treat that, you know, because you're gonna go over people, but that's over my head. That's an attorney question.
Yeah.
So how many homes are they planning on that they sectioned off to?
I can't remember, it's changed, I'll be honest, it's changed a bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he first approached, I wasn't on the board at the time, and they were approaching because someone was looking to purchase, the front parcel that's on
Gas station.
for a gas station. This is the same owner, there was someone looking to purchase it for a gas station. They want to make sure that that piece could be commercial.
Mhm.
So that's how long ago this has been going on.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago
Yeah.
at least.
So it's kind of slowly taking off into this, and then I think he sold a portion to a neighboring property that just wanted to buy it because it was close to their property. So he's kind of readjusted that, I think, a whole bunch of times. And I mean, myself, I live on a private road in a private subdivision that was developed by someone. And there are things about it that I don't love because it wasn't structured. You know, I think there's things that the county would maybe be protecting some of the landowners on. I mean, everybody knows about Brushy Hollow. There's just some other subdivisions that are just not very favorable to the people who have later on purchased, and then like the road maintenance and things are just asinine. You know, it's just not favorable for anybody who owns in those. And there's nothing really you can do.
Right,
You're stuck. You're stuck. So I don't disagree. I think that there needs to be some regulations there that make sure that they're following the minimals. I don't know how we would need to do that, but
Maybe we should study what other counties are doing with them first, and then work on a proposal to the commissioners regarding a change the ordinance.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense.
Can you say that again?
And so that we should probably look at some comparable counties and see what counties in our area have ordinances regarding subdivisions, and then once we've done that, then make recommendations to the commissioners.
I mean, that's.
How did they come up with the deed descriptions out of Tipso Acres? Who did that?
Who did that survey work?
That was
That
mailing,
was,
like 2000 something.
yeah, it's been a long time.
And what, I think they
So did they
reported,
follow this?
well, I think that there's sanitary sewer there, I think, so they might have, there's covenants and restrictions.
You talking about Tipsaw Acres?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's covenants and restrictions there. I've sold
Yeah.
several lots out of there. The county actually took over the roadway. He brought it to specs. They're actually, recently this past year, they actually ran gas out there too. There was no gas out there. So it's progressed over the years, but it's now county roadway. He made all that to specs. So I mean, and it does have covenants and restrictions. That's the thing. It's such a broad spectrum on subdivisions. You know, you have
Well, I guess that was my question. Who came up with the covenants and restrictions?
whoever their attorney is.
Yeah.
Because you can't, I don't believe that we can jurisdict a subdivision's covenants restrictions right now, what it says. Cause they're all different, like in,
They need to be different
yeah,
based
that's,
on their location,
yeah.
yeah.
The main thing we probably could do is just make sure that they get their width, their lots are big
Correct.
enough for us to protect them when they put us, field bed in or something, and then a road out
right,
somehow.
right.
And that's probably the only two things we could really do. I even the flooding, that's a thing too. A person has to look at it and make sure that it's not flooding.
And I think that would go back with, if they're building a house, they still have to come to us for a permit. So then we can look at it and say, well, unfortunately, you bought something that's in complete flood, we're gonna have to, so I think they'd have to do their due diligence in that before they purchase the lots.
I really think if we get our website, get it up to low density subdivision, bring that out there that we have one or something that, this is the first one really came through in, several years.
Quite a while, yeah.
And it don't come up around often, but most of the time, I do estate surveys a lot where it's, these bigger tracts, and a lot of times, I have been approached to do these, and I say, hey, we got low density subdivision, but I haven't been on the marketing side. Now, it says specifically for marketing, planner scheme for marketing with the smaller tracts. So basically, it's not your brother or your sister.
Right, it's not a family
Right.
farm being divided among
Yeah.
siblings, it is,
Yeah.
or giving your kid a place to build a
Cause
house.
that's
So the
tough too,
concept,
cause
yeah.
if you got brought up, say I got 5 kids and 10 acres and you wanna give them 2 acres apiece, and then, well, does that marketing, it's.
Yeah, the marketing's a good piece that.
It's a big piece there, and so
yeah.
there's discernment and how do you interpret this, you understand?
Because you definitely don't want to be in the business of telling somebody what they can and can't do with their
Yeah.
personal land when
Yeah.
they're giving it to a child, or a
Yeah.
relative or something, yeah.
And that's the thing, cause a lot of times you don't, but the thing is, you don't know what that neighbor, if that kid's gonna get divorced and they're gonna give to another. I've seen the best and the worst. But it is, you almost, if this is gonna be a buildable lot, you're gonna put a house on it, and then somebody's gonna get a mortgage or something, and the banks eventually, a lot of times, they wanna protect themselves to get out as well, in and out. There you go.
Yeah.
Is it ready?
So for this particular one though, I don't know, is there anything we need to be doing on this particular instance? Because once it was brought to their attention, we actually went to the landowner and said, hey, this has been brought up, not knowing. And I think their surveyor actually, I don't know if they reached out to you, David, or not, but they were trying to, not for lack of better terms, backtrack to figure out what they maybe missed there. But I don't
Their
know.
surveyor would have to come to county, to find out all the information, correct?
That was what,
Yeah.
that was what I understood had happened, but again, I don't
Yeah.
know the full details of all that, but.
Only thing I would say, I guess, it would be nice if the surveyor, I don't know what plan they have now, that's the same recorded one they have, is to present that to the planning commission, the president or that. And then Mandy, you could review that
I don't
and,
think solar costs or something like that, but I'd be happy to bring it to y'all.
well, you could do that.
Yeah, I think the board on those kind of things, anytime there's, what I'm trying to do on this is because there's. no-
You could maybe share their preliminary plat on the email to us all,
Yes,
and then, we
Maybe
can
bring
throw,
that up.
give our thoughts,
we
and
can
then.
even do a special meeting on something like that, if there's something specific like that they wanna meet with us.
It said, it says here that, we don't have to, I forgot where it is on here, but, it doesn't, and there's a fee too, so there's a fee that we could collect
That's fine.
for that, and,
What was the fee on that, I don't remember, it was $200.
well, 97, yeah, it's 200 for high density subdivision, a fee for a low density subdivision will be $200, this was in.
See, that's why that ordinance needs to be looked over, because it's.
It costs more than that to build a house right now, one
Yes.
house, so,
Absolutely.
on a permit, yeah.
So, right, yeah, here, 501, procedure, it says low density subdivision, an applicant for a low density subdivision shall submit such documents as a zoning administrator requires. And upon examination, the zoning administrator may approve the subdivision or may refer the matter to the planning commission for action.
So maybe what we
Okay.
need to do then is on our side, just so we're protected, and just a thought, and this don't have to be, but I could just send them a letter, or draft a letter to go to them that says we need to look at this, maybe plan a special meeting for us to
Yes.
review their plans. And then
Maybe
they can,
have them come to the meeting.
right, yeah, it would be a
Yes, that's
special,
what she said.
something for them to actually come and show what the
Yes.
plans are, yeah,
I mean, because they can explain more,
Yes.
what they wanna do than.
correct.
Well, that's what we did with the one out there. They came in.
Yeah. And it's, yeah, something,
Okay, so
I
we're
don't,
gonna,
I don't want this to be a hard thing to do.
No.
Right, no, we don't want to
No.
discourage anybody from developing.
Yeah,
no, correct. I think it's no different than when we had that campground at one point.
Yeah, I
They hadn't even bought the ground, but they came to us and said what they're thinking to do. So I think it's the same idea, different thing.
Yeah.
Zoning versus subdivision, but a similar
Yeah,
concept.
same concept.
Okay, so we can draft a letter on this, that's here.
Thank you.
And then it's not on the agenda, so I don't know if we can waiver for that, but we're going to. What we spoke about last time at the meeting was the reduction of the square footage for the quote unquote tiny homes or small homes. I have the email from the attorney, Andrew Foster, about, I asked what the steps are for that, once we decided we were agreeing to change it. And step 1 and step 2, and I think the next step was to go to the commissioners, which they actually approved that on their last meeting on the 15th. So that was approved from them. And then, let's see how his next steps were on that.
That's just an addition to the ordinance, correct?
This is just changing that number, yes.
Yes.
And then the second, so the third step, once the commissioners receive it, they have 90 days active, they must pass the notice in their intent to consider. If they accept it in full, they proceed to publish the notice of adopting and adding the code. If they amend or reject it, it's sent back to the planning commission. So I think we've done all of our due diligence on our end. So then I just would have to see how that gets placed into our codes. Like American Publishing goes into the code as part of our next code and what number that would be, or just editing that. It would just be removing or changing that number. Mhm.
Did I just refresh myself here real quick?
Yeah.
Did we reduce it or did we
We were changing,
it to,
Changing one number.
yes,
400 to 800 square feet.
we were establishing a new minimum gross area of 480
Yeah.
for residential dwellings, removing the previous requirement that included porches, decks, and covered by roof square footage, eliminating the current 800 minimum and replacing it with proposed 480. That was what we had, this is what I had sent to the commissioners.
State code here says 400 on this paper here.
yeah, I pulled this off the state's recommend, this is what they think is a good idea. It was interesting reading everything that you said.
I do think, like we've all talked, the tiny home concept is ever growing.
It is.
Everybody, it's because it's so expensive to own something that's
Yes.
larger anymore.
That's what I was just talking to you about before the meeting started. Someone's wanting to put up.
Yeah.
I mean,
And you wouldn't want to deter someone from owning their own home just because of a few square foot, so I don't know, that's just my opinion.
No, I'm just saying with the 480, I just brought this print, I was just reading this and I just brought everybody a copy, is because ours doesn't talk about a loft or,
I think if you get, because here's the thing with my only thought, and then we don't have an inspector, so who's gonna go out and confirm that loft was?
I agree.
mean, it's just a whole nother bucket of worms, I think, if you start adding all the
and it
bunch of
can be
others.
built at any time.
Yeah, so 480 is just like a blanketed square footage, I think if it's a loft or not a loft, I don't.
I think it's 480 square feet regardless, total,
Right.
yeah,
Correct.
that's why you say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 800 and then we moved it down to, we've recommended coming back down to 480 and not having to go out and
Have that
measure the
additional,
porch and the,
But you had to measure a porch and everything
The
else.
480 includes the covered porch, right?
All encumbrance, 480
Yeah.
square footage.
yeah.
Not just living space.
Right, yes.
already, yeah.
Yeah.
We were just trying to set a flat minimum and not get real stickler on everything.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. I just wanted to share this.
I think this is cool, cause I do, well, I mean, of course, that's whatever, but the government, there's a lot of loan entities that require certain things. So there's a lot of, in order to be considered veterans of the other things too, but I'm agreeing with it too.
Yeah, I don't think, this is just FYI.
But yeah, I do like
Share.
that they have that, and that's even smaller than what we're going for, so I feel comfortable with,
Mhm.
that if the state feels 400 is good, we should get it for it.
Yeah, they just have to have permanent septic and,
And that was something else, we get quite a few questions on, well, what if I do this and what if I do that? And basically I told them if they're adding a sink toilet or anything, they're gonna have to go talk to her first, make sure their septic is good. I'm not getting all that, so, and they have been, I think so far so good. We've even had one that had, let's see, how was it? They had a former manufacturer on there and they were wanting to put a new one in, which obviously had new bathroom systems. So I sent them to the sanitation, and they did, they got all the approval, she went out and checked it, we were good to go, but I think some of that is kind of a misconception that it already has one, we're good to go, and that's not always the case, so we want to make sure that that's.
okay, so we think we're done with this then. We're just
I
waiting on
think
them.
so, I think everything's finished, commissioners have approved that, and then I just have to look into what that actually looks like to submit that into public to edit that. So, we'll have to do
I'm
some.
trying to think who did that for us. Somebody did that for us. Oh, Canberra.
Okay,
Wait, somebody did all that work for us.
so I need to find that part out, and I'm not 100% sure, but once I find that out, to get that actually shifted over into our new bylaw. I can't, I don't think there's anything else on that, anybody else have anything they can think of? Just to re-mention, if you're wanting to be on the rotation or anything, I think I sent that email out. Some people might not check their emails as much as I do, but, to make sure and get with, the auditor's office on the paperwork that goes alongside that. Any other questions?
Good. So where did we come on the density?
I'm going,
Go right to letter, yeah. Okay,
Yes.
never mind. Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
Short-term memory
And do
issues.
we need to make a motion on anything like that? I don't know. It wasn't really something that was,
Okay.
so unless make a motion to correct that.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think a motion would come after we,
Okay,
yes.
so I'm gonna draft a letter. I'll just send it out to you guys before I actually send that letter, make sure it's covering everything we're asking. And then I'll get that to that landowner. And then from there, just see what the schedule looks like, so maybe do a special quick meeting to see what they have and go over there. And if that's still their plan, but it could have changed tonight.
I like the other business.
Yeah, and I think that was the idea. We have a lot of, not as rural, but I think they were a little bit more lax on their their structures of what it could be. I think they were gonna allow some home water structures and things for homes, whereas some of the other subdivisions do not. It was more of a rural subdivision concept, but they still wanted to.
Barn dominiums and stuff.
Yes, they still wanted, they even have covenants or restrictions, things regarding the age of the manufacturers, the whole concept, so if they can come and present that would
It'd be awesome.
Okay,
Education.
I think that's it. Anybody else have any comments, questions?
Sorry.
I just see if anybody else have anything they want to add before we close it out.
Make a motion to adjourn. So.
All those in favor?
We brought up John Brenner. One of these meetings, I heard him say that rough temp is minimum lot